Just writing to support the IMer who caused you to issue a correction. Jesse Singal is unequivocally a transphobic asshat. Now, listen, that is an opinion. We allow opinions on here. I'm not even sure if there is a way you can assess whether someone's an asshat or not.
Right.
Anyone who can't see that is missing something, maybe their own unexamined transphobia, maybe perspective. And if we're the ones missing something, they could give us an argument to explain how a man whose BS is regularly quoted approvingly in transphobic legislation, whose reporting has significantly exaggerated the importance of detransitioners, and who has generally acted like someone who at the very least does not care if it helps or hurts trans folks, is somehow not a transphobe. Thank you for all you do.
Transphobic lawsuits, just to, in case we don't open that, I am up to pedantry. It's transphobic lawsuits.
What's that?
What they were cited in, or at least what I know. It might be cited in transphobic legislation, but I know specifically the lawsuit brought by multiple.
Oh, right.
Trans attorney general.
Right, exactly. Let's do that now. Should we get to this?
Sure.
Or should we just do the Tim Pool thing
tomorrow.
first? Oh, well, I say we do it now, and then tomorrow, if he wants to call in, he could, absolutely. I mean, look, I'm not going to be accused of not fixing this as soon as we have the opportunity to do it.
Absolutely. I mean, we're on top of it.
Do you have the that original? Oh, you sent it to me, right?
Yeah, I can read this IM thank you, Affluence and Wretchedness. You wrote in and said...
Okay, well, wait, let me contextualize it, okay?
Yes, sure.
So, apparently, Friday on the show, when I was not here, as folks know, I was on vacation. At the end of the show, Emma received an IM.
Yes.
And she read the IM and reacted to it. The IM said, criticized the writer Jesse Singal for amplifying or publicizing part of the affidavit from Jamie Reed. She was the, I guess she worked at the front of a.
She was a case manager at a clinic that did trans-affirming care.
Louis.
Yeah.
Yes.
And she came out with all sorts of accusations about the St. Louis clinic, essentially really shoving people through a pipeline to get trans care. And subsequent reporting showed that her story was not corroborated by the vast majority, overwhelming majority. It almost understates it by saying that, of parents and children who went through or who dealt with that clinic, I should say. And this IMer said that Jesse promoted her affidavit, which she gave a sworn affidavit, and promoted the part that talked about OCD care, that that one of the patients had OCD, and they were given hormone therapy for the OCD, presumably, whatnot. That IMer saw that there was a controversy and has written back. Here, why don't you read that?
Affluence and Wretchedness says, I am so sorry that my IM last week made Jesse Signal angry with you all. He's a transphobe and a huge loser, but I accept and confess that I made an attribution error. The article I was referring to was written by whistleblower Jamie Reed for Barry Weiss's terrible Substack, not Jesse Signal, who has his who has his own terrible Substack. Nothing Reed says should be taken at face value, as the assigned media post Emma read on Friday explained. Reed's assertions about the patient with OCD demonstrate a real failure to understand both OCD treatment and gender-affirming care. Anyway, big congrats to Jesse on all of those shout-outs he's been getting in anti-trans legislation, and sorry to the crew for drawing his ire.
Now Emma and read that IM.
Yes.
And I went back to research this, and it is the case that Jesse did never mention the OCD thing in his piece where he promoted other parts of the affidavit on his Substack. So he didn't do the OCD part. he did other parts. And as far as I can tell, he only wrote 2 pieces on Jamie Reed. Now, I may be wrong. Because some stuff is not necessarily always indexed. But he basically just said should be skeptical of all the other people who basically did not corroborate Jamie Reed's assessment. Now, I don't know where, that was basically it. So I just want to make that 100% clear.
Yes.
While he wrote 2 pieces, largely in defense of Jamie Reed's account, he never mentioned the words OCD or that part of her affidavit.
That was just other spurious bullshit that she included in the affidavit.
That is, I think, accurate, because I want to be accurate, but I just want to make it clear that the IMer, I would agree with the IMer that they had the wrong attribution. Now, we should also add, because Jesse wanted me to look into this too. You expressed the opinion
that he was a transphobe.
Now, I don't think...
And I also said garbage human being.
And, okay. The garbage human being, let's put the transphobe. There is no ultimate source who gets to deem whether someone's a transphobe or not. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's out of the bounds of what reasonable people think that he's a transphobe.
Yes.
No, for instance, GLAAD, I think.
Yes, GLAAD has a tab on Jesse.
They have a whole webpage.
Where they, we could, we don't need to, this is not our statement, but this is GLAAD's statement about Jesse.
Okay, all right. Now, I want to be fair here.
Yes.
This is GLAAD, on their page where they talk about people who they say may be transphobic. Okay, fine. That's one side of the argument. But do you have the citation? Can we show the citation from the Republican AGs? Now, this is a citation from a Republican lawsuit in 2019 that this was a brief where you had, I think it was like 6, 7 Republican AGs, Texas, Nebraska, Kentucky, Kansas, Louisiana, Arizona, and Mississippi, where they were suing the United States Department of Health over having to provide trans health care as, under federal guidelines. And they cited Jesse's piece from The Atlantic from way back in 2018. Well, it was 2019 when they did this. And that's on page 21. We can go down to it. Can you scroll down to that?
This is a screenshot here, but yeah.
Okay, I'll scroll down to it because I happen to have it. Because I did my research because I needed to look into this. And it was page 21. And they say, let's see here. Okay. The basis, the bathroom example highlights the fundamental point that putative interveners miss. The basis of sex discrimination law as it currently exists is biological sex. By contrast, there is no broad consensus, much less federal law, on the proper approach to treating individuals with gender dysphoria, the clinical term for the feeling of disconnect between one's gender and sex at birth. Now, to say that there's no broad consensus, there is a broad consensus within the medical profession, how you treat gender dysphoria. Now, you could disagree with what that consensus is, but there is a broad consensus amongst medical professionals as to how one treats gender dysphoria. I would not go to lay people and say, how would you treat gender dysphoria? Mm-hmm. I would not go to lay people and say, like, how would you treat some other mental or physical issue that people are having? I wouldn't even cite that. Like, because you don't ask the general population about a medical question. But there is broad consensus. But it's weird that they say that. The clinical term, and they say it's a clinical term, for the feeling of disconnect between one's gender identity and sex at birth. See E.g., what does that mean, Matt? You're a you were a master. Yeah.
For example.
For example, Jesse Singal, comma, when children say they're trans, The Atlantic, July, August 2018, and then in parens describing the, quote, growing number of people, end quote, who regret transitioning to a different sex and later detransition. Now, I have no doubt there was a raw figure of people that was a growing number of people. Mm-hmm. Because there's a growing number of people who are transitioning. It is not a social contagion, as I've seen.
In the same way, left-handedness was not a social contagion once more people began to identify as being left-handed when the stigma had been lifted from that.
I don't think that actually, being gay was a, or being being an out gay person was a sort of like a, people decided to do that just because it was hip and cool. It's because society, the implications and problems associated with that. So just as in like they would report like subway crime was up after the
pandemic.
After the pandemic.
Right.
Well, ridership was up.
Yeah.
And the relationship between crime and ridership did not change. To say without any context, there's a growing number of people who regret transitioning is to ignore the fact that, like, if I give 100 people cosmetic surgery, let's say, or, I've known women who had breast reduction or rhinoplasty, or let's say, whatever it is, if I give 100, there's going to be a number of people who regret having it. If I provide it for 200 people, largely you could expect that the number's going to grow. It may double, may not double, but it's going to grow. Without context, you get a misleading idea that it is being provided to a higher percentage of people for whom it is not appropriate.
I'm going to give this context just really quickly. This is from the American Journal, or it's from Pediatrics, I should say. They did a study of 5 years after initial social transition for children. 7.3% of youth had retransitioned at least once. At the end of this period, most youth identified as binary transgender youth. That's 94%. Including 1.3% who retransitioned to another identity before returning to their binary transgender identity. A total of 2.5% of youth identified as cisgender and 3.5% as non-binary. Later cisgender identities were more common among youth whose initial social transition occurred before age 6 years. Their retransitions often occurred before age 10 years. The 94% figure is the figure that after 5 years, those trans children continue to identify as the gender that they had socially transitioned into. Then the 2.5% is the figure where they go back to their cisgender identification, and that is heavily weighted under the age of 6 years old. 3.5% is non-binary. That is the figure that takes into account the dynamic that you're describing.
And to be clear, a social transition means they just probably like wear clothes that are less gender associated with boys' clothes.
Yep.
Or maybe they, whatever. I mean, it is, I've known multiple kids who have done that, and all it basically taught them was to be more accepting of people and go through life.
Yes, that is before the like more intervention.
Putting that aside.
Yes.
Okay. The growing number of people who regret transitioning to a different sex and later detransition. Now, it's possible the Republicans cited that and that little thing, and it gave a misleading perception of what the article is. And this is an important dynamic because you can provide, and it's a quote, so I have no doubt, growing number of people, those words are definitely there. You can provide people something that is not a lie, but it can be misleading enough in the way that it's framed or presented that it has the real world implications of a lie, which brings us to and look, I don't know, Jesse, what do you call him, a garbage person?
Yeah, and a transphobe, I think.
My experience, limited experience with him, has been unpleasant.
A garbage human being. I just want to be as accurate as possible. I called Jesse a garbage human being and then also a transphobe.
Okay. Well, the transphobe, we've already said. Like, the point is that you could say he's transphobe. Glad says he is.
Yeah.
But these Republican AGs from these red states who are trying to stop trans care, they don't think he's a transphobe.
That's the other side of the coin.
And, to be extra judicious, Glad doesn't say he's a transphobe. They just devote an entire page on their website to the different misleading parts.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Matt.
There you go. All right. So we don't know. It's in dispute. The Republican AGs who want to stop trans care, they don't say he's a transphobe.
Here's what Glad says on that piece. Singal's story was criticized for front-loading the case's, quote, this is from Slate, as the piece goes on, notably without a single happy, well-adjusted trans teen among its host of central characters for the first 9,000-plus words, it becomes apparent that certain voices and fears are privileged over others. The Atlantic published follow-up letters from parents. I write to you as a mother of a transgender son. This piece penned by you is highly problematic. It muddies the water for parents navigating this path of raising a trans child and is damaging to our trans youth. And I'll just say, I think both the GOP AGs and Glad agree with that assessment of that parent.
Well, okay, so this gets to the other issue, is that you said, and let's get the quote here.
Yeah.
You said in that same segment, and I'm doing this because I'm doing it out of respect for Jesse, who emailed me and wanted me.
Was very upset.
He was very upset, and also I saw him on Twitter, but we'll talk about that. I didn't see that until later, actually, after I saw his email. And here it is. You said lies were cited by Republican attorney generals for the work he is doing.
Correct.
Now, let's just be honest about this. Grammatically, it's a sloppy sentence.
Yeah.
I mean, you have don't you have a master's?
I have a English degree, communication studies degree as well, and a master's in media studies.
Let's just we got to air this out. You said lies were cited by a Republican attorney general for the work he's doing. Now, to be fair, you were off camera, and maybe you stepped on a little bit. Am I accurately saying what you said?
Yes. I listened to it again. I kind of say lies underneath, but yeah, lies is what I said.
Yeah, but what does that mean? Well, lies were cited by Republican attorney generals for the work he is doing. They didn't do that for the work he's doing. They did it for the work they're doing.
Right. I mean, look.
It made it sound like they were commending him, although it is an honor, I guess, to be in a brief and be considered an authority.
It feels towards policy that I was, in support of. I would think it was an honor if I was cited that way.
But in some ways, he's doing the work for, they're doing the work. They're using it for his work. Like it is in service. His work is in service of this really bad agenda, which I don't know if he agrees with or not. Maybe let's just stipulate that he doesn't agree with that lawsuit. But somehow they're manipulating the work he's doing.
Yeah.
And gosh, I will say for me, it's one thing to I got this opportunity to write this big article in The Atlantic. I'm not doing it for my career or anything. I genuinely believe that this is a real problem. And, but I want to make sure that it's not being used in an incorrect way. It's a danger. In fact, I've heard them say on their podcast, the two of them, he and his co-host, one of the dangers, this stuff can be used by conservatives. If I did that and then I saw that it was being used, I might be more judicious in the way that I approach this subject in the future. Because if my real agenda was just to deal with the nuance, back in 2018, I'm just looking at the nuance.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I see this snowball. Would you keep throwing snow on it? I wouldn't.
Well, I would at least send an email to like the manager of whoever put together this this brief, or what's the citation here? These attorneys general.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if Jesse has spoken privately to the creators of this lawsuit and has said that, you know, I object to the usage of my work
so
here.
He
reached out to us because he had problems with our
He
work.
issued a tweet at the time saying these people have used my work in 180 degrees differently than I intended it. And I'll just say I find that completely bullshit. Both GLAAD and those AGs found your article useful toward a certain end.
Okay.
And
all right,
also,
but
that's my impression too.
You're a cynic, but we can see from his work since then that he was far more sensitive to being used in that way, right?
Right. Yeah.
Or
sure.
no?
Yeah, I don't know. And, you know, like, I don't know. I got in a back and forth with him now, and, you know, GLAAD cites this amplified, unproven social theory of contagion. Some anecdotal evidence suggests that social forces can play a role in young person's gender questioning. I've seen this more frequently. He cites psychologist Laura Edwards-Leeper wrote in an email, and GLAAD says a widely cited study on this alleged influence was reissued with the correction reading rapid onset gender dysphoria is not a formal mental health diagnosis at this time. This report. Now, he comes and says there might be some issue on like whether they recognize that, but I also see this article in the Scientific American from a few days ago. The American Psychological Association and 61 other healthcare providers organizations signed a letter in 2021 denouncing the validity of rapid onset gender dysphoria as a clinical diagnosis, and a steadily growing body of scientific evidence demonstrates that it does not reflect transgender adolescents' experiences, and that social contagion is not causing more young people to seek gender affirming care. So like, look, maybe there's
I'm sure he's going to write up that study.
I think he'll write it up when there's like movement toward, I think, what I am just guessing based on his output to be his preferred feelings on this topic.
Now, you and I were going to have a debate over the other part of the question, which was the
Conscious
lies
lying.
part.
Yeah, but I'll say, look, I'll be very magnanimous. I'm interested in one contention, then they can kind of get confused. So one is that is Jesse Singal consciously lying when he airs this stuff? I'm less interested in that. I'm interested in, is it anti-trans? And I got my answer from Republican attorneys general and GLAAD.
Well, this is like akin to, conservatives saying like, well, Donald Trump can't be guilty of trying to overthrow the election because he thought it was, he really won it.
No, so I do have to amend based on, making sure I want the contention that I want foregrounded, that it's just a misleading pattern of reporting and not conscious lies. So
and not just the reporting, it's also the writing too.
Yeah.
I mean, because when you front load all this stuff,
the edge cases.
look,
right.
If I put out a newspaper and all I put on the front page every single day was a mugging here and a mugging there and this and that, and every page was full of muggings, and then on page 30 I put statistics for the crime, muggings down 5% this year, year over year. Is there any falsehoods in that paper? If I have 29 pages full of every mugging that's taken place in New York City, every piece of crime, whatever it is, and then on page 30 of that newspaper, I put, incidentally, crime is down 5% year over year. Am I lying? Not according to Jesse, and I think probably not according to the absolute strictest definition in the dictionary. But am I misleading people by either omission or by
lack of emphasis.
Or emphasis.
I mean, I do have some advice for Jesse in case he wants to continue writing on the subject, was apparently is the only one he ever writes about. That if you want to not be understood as anti-trans by both Republicans pursuing an anti-trans agenda and pro-LGBT groups, the inverted pyramid is structured, is the most important to least, this is the inverted pyramid structure of journalism. The inverted pyramid is structured from most important to least important. The pressing content leading and then the less essential material following, decreasing in importance over the course of an article or written piece. Might stop you from getting cited from both hate mongers and anti-hate groups.
It might, yeah. Any real honest, intellectual analysis of trans issues in this country would weight I believe, the statistical propensity for, children, say, who decide to transition continuing with that gender. They would weight their reporting in a way that was proportionate with those numbers, right? Like that's how I would, if I was trying to intellectually explore this topic, that's how I would approach something, not just focusing on the 3-ish% that I mentioned earlier in that, not just, but often focusing on that smaller figure and front loading my reporting on that. I would say it's natural that some people might draw some conclusions based on that peculiar emphasis of more edge cases versus the overwhelming statistical data.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
But I just want to say, we did this because Jesse was very, very upset that you had not Googled when you read that IM. Now,
If it's a pattern, I would say.
We should just say about journalistic integrity. He accused me of saying those things. I was on vacation. Then he accused Matt Binder because he had sources apparently that told him it was Matt Binder.
Oh, Bradley.
Now,
Shout out to those sources who listen to the show every day.
And now, to his credit, he did delete those. He has on his podcast, and he felt that he was defamed, straightforwardly defamed, because his article was referred to as lies. He has, on his program, because I had to go and do research on this and Google him to look up some of his stuff, he has said that this show is stupid.
Wow.
Now, is this show 49% stupid? Maybe. But is it 51% stupid? I think we just had somebody on who was very well educated and we interviewed him for.
Also,
now,
do we know that
possible.
it's stupid? You have to prove that we know it's stupid.
I want proof that the show is stupid, if that's the case. Mm-hmm. And because that's defamatory.
Oh, yeah.
And the idea that we do this type of stuff, according to him and his co-host, that we will talk about trans rights because it's cash and it also it is virtue signaling. There's nothing I can do about the supposed virtue signaling that's associated with wanting
do more of that.
rights for people. But we're going to clip this entire clip and we're going to demonetize it. Make sure that you tell everybody we will not make a dime off of this.
No.
In fact, it's costing money because we can't do,
other clips.
40 clips we had of Dave Rubin that we were going to do today. We can't do those. But and also, I should also say, in terms of defamatory, his co-host, because, he came and reported to the manager in this situation, supposedly. His co-host on a Twitter thread claimed that I stole someone's photograph for a thumbnail, which it was not the case. And I know Jesse saw that because he jumped into that thread to make some other criticism.
Wow.
And so I just want to say, this is out there. I'm not. It's defamatory.
8 lawyers are on the case now.
Here's the thing. When you say this is a pack of lies, that's an opinion. When you say someone's a transphobe, that's an opinion. Mm-hmm. When you say someone's a garbage person, that's an opinion.
Yeah.
But when you say someone took a specific action that can be assessed, whether that action is taken, that's where you start to run into genuinely actionable defamatory practices.
Absolutely.
People think I'm a thief. That's gonna hurt my business. In addition to what do I tell my kids? But I'm just saying. All right. Are we done with that?
No,
Sir,
yeah.
I think we've given a full correction and retraction
amendment
where it's necessary.
Absolutely. Yeah, everyone has all the facts now, so they can make their determinations about whether or not they think that Jesse is a garbage person or if they think Jesse is a transphobe or not. They can make that choice now just with all the information presented to them.
And let's put in a link to the Republican AG stuff and all the stuff we referenced. Make sure we put that into this thing so that everybody can have the opportunity to follow through this stuff.
Huge weight off, man.
That almost saves him from having to write another article.
There you go.
Just talk about this for another 2 weeks.
Exactly.
See if someone else has been mean to him.
You better not monetize it. Better not monetize it.